My dear friends, silence. It's such a simple word, but it has such a powerful meaning. Most of the time in life, we think talking more will solve our problems, but in reality, when you stay silent, you start to hear, you start to see, you start to understand. Let me share a small story. Once, a man went to a wise monk and asked, "What is the secret of happiness?" The monk simply smiled and said, "Silence." The man thought, "That's it? Just silence?" But as he spent time in silence, he began to notice that his anger reduced, his relationships improved, and his mind became silence helps us listen better. And listening is not just about using our ears, it is about opening our hearts, our minds, and our attention to what is happening around us and within us. In today's world, most people hear, but very few truly listen. We are constantly surrounded by noise, phones buzzing, television blaring, people speaking, our own mind running a marathon of thoughts. And because of this constant noise, we often miss the depth of what others are saying. Imagine a child who wants to share his small achievement with his parents. He says, "Mom, Dad, today my teacher praised me." But the parents, busy with their phones or work stress, respond with only a distracted, "That's good, beta." The child walks away quietly, but deep inside he feels unheard, unseen. What the child wanted was not a reply, but attention, presence, and listening. Silence teaches us to pause and give that presence. When we are silent, we create a space for others to open up. Have you ever noticed that when you stay quiet and let someone speak, they slowly begin to share things they would not otherwise? They feel safe because you are not interrupting, not judging, not waiting to reply. You are simply listening. Many relationships break not because of lack of love, but because of lack of listening. A husband speaks, but the wife is thinking about something else. A friend shares his problems, but the other friend is busy preparing what advice to give instead of really hearing. In such cases, silence becomes a gift. When we stop preparing answers in our mind and simply listen, people feel valued. And when people feel valued, relationships deepen. Think of the times when arguments happen. Both people speak at the same time, louder and louder, until it is no longer a discussion but a fight. No one is listening, everyone is trying to win. But what if, in that moment, one person decides to be silent? What if one person simply listens, without interrupting, without shouting back? The energy of the entire argument changes. Suddenly, the other person feels heard. Their anger starts to melt. They realize that they don't need to keep shouting because someone is actually paying attention. Silence in such moments is not weakness, it is wisdom, it is choosing peace over pride. Listening in silence also helps us understand what people are not saying. Often, words are just the surface, but the real emotions lie beneath. For example, when someone says, "I'm fine," their tone or body language may say the opposite. If you are silent and observant, you will notice the pain behind the words. You will recognize that "I'm fine" might actually mean "I need someone to understand me." Silence allows us to listen beyond words. It allows us to listen to emotions, to unspoken feelings, to the language of the heart. But listening is not only about others, it is also about ourselves. We often complain that life is confusing, that we don't know what to do, that our mind is restless. But the truth is, our inner voice is always guiding us. We just don't listen. We are too busy scrolling, talking, comparing, rushing. When we stay silent, truly silent, that inner voice starts to become clear. You begin to hear what your conscience is whispering, what your intuition is suggesting, what your heart is craving. In silence, the clutter clears, and the truth within you becomes louder. Take a simple daily life example. You are faced with a tough decision. You ask 10 people for advice, you read articles online, you weigh the pros and cons endlessly. But the confusion only grows bigger. Then one day you sit quietly, maybe in nature, maybe in your room, with no phone, no distractions, just silence. And suddenly your heart tells you what feels right. That clarity was always inside you. Silence helped you listen to it. Listening in silence is also a form of respect. When an elder speaks and we stay silent, we are showing respect to their experience. When a child speaks and we stay silent, we are showing respect to their feelings. When a colleague speaks and we stay silent, we are showing respect to their perspective. It does not mean we agree with everything. It simply means we value their words enough to hear them fully. Respect through listening is one of the simplest yet most powerful gifts we can offer. In our noisy world, where everyone wants to be heard, the one who listens becomes rare and therefore precious. People remember the ones who listened to them more than the ones who gave them advice. Advice may solve problems, but listening heals hearts. Sometimes, the person who is speaking does not even need a solution, they only need an ear, and silence gives that ear. Friends, silence is not emptiness. Silence is not about saying nothing, it is about saying less and listening more. It is about being present, being open, and being connected. When we practice silence, we train ourselves to listen, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. And when we listen better, we understand better. When we understand better, we love better. And when we love better, we live better. So remember, silence is not passive. It is active, powerful, and transformative. Stay silent not to withdraw from the world, but to connect with it more deeply. Stay silent not to avoid communication, but to improve it. Stay silent not because you have nothing to say, but because you have everything to hear. For when you stay silent, you will not only listen better, you will live better. Silence protects your relationships. And this is something that we often forget in the heat of the moment. Relationships are fragile. They are built on love, trust, and understanding, but they can easily be damaged by careless words spoken in anger or frustration. Have you ever noticed when people look back at the moments they regret most, it is not always about what they did, but about what they said. A harsh word, once spoken, cannot be taken back. It may be forgiven, but the wound it leaves on the heart can take a long time to heal. Silence, in those moments of anger, becomes the shield that protects your bond with the people you love. Think about a simple argument between a husband and wife. The husband comes home tired, stressed from work. The wife, equally tired from managing the household, asks him for help with something. He, frustrated, snaps back with a sharp tone. The wife reacts instantly, raising her voice in return. Within seconds, what could have been a calm evening turns into a heated argument. Both of them are saying things not because they mean them, but because anger is speaking on their behalf. Later, they regret it. They may apologize, they may move on, but the words spoken have already left a scar. Now imagine if, in that very moment, one of them had chosen silence instead of reaction. If the husband, instead of snapping, had taken a deep breath and stayed silent for a while, the argument would not have escalated. Silence could have saved the evening and perhaps even strengthened the relationship. It is often said that words are like arrows. Once they leave the bow, they cannot be taken back. A silent pause before reacting is like holding the arrow back, preventing damage. Many of us feel the need to always respond immediately, to defend ourselves, to prove we are right. But relationships are not battles to be won, they are bonds to be preserved. In arguments, silence is not defeat, it is wisdom. It shows maturity. It shows that you value the relationship more than your temporary pride. Consider parents and children. A teenager may shout in frustration, "You never understand me." The natural reaction of a parent is to respond with authority, to remind them of respect, to counter the harsh words with even harsher words. But if the parent stays silent in that moment, something different happens. The teenager, seeing no argument from the other side, begins to calm down. After some time, when emotions settle, the parent can gently talk and explain. That silence, instead of worsening the conflict, protects the bond of love between parent and child. Silence creates space for reflection, and reflection brings understanding. Silence also protects friendships. We all have moments when our friends may hurt us with their words or actions. If we respond immediately with anger, we risk breaking a precious bond. But if we stay silent for a while, giving ourselves and our friend time to think, we realize that most hurts are not intentional. People act out of stress, confusion, or their own struggles. Silence gives us time to see the bigger picture, to forgive more easily, and to hold on to friendships that truly matter. There is also silence in moments of empathy. Sometimes a loved one is going through pain, maybe the loss of a dear one, maybe a failure in life. In those times, words often fall short. Trying to console them with explanations or advice may not help. But sitting with them in silence, holding their hand, or simply being present speaks louder than 1,000 words. That silence protects the relationship from becoming shallow. It shows depth, care, and understanding. Let's look at workplaces too. Imagine a heated meeting where one colleague criticizes another harshly. The natural instinct is to defend yourself immediately, to fight back. But silence, in that moment, can protect professional relationships. Instead of responding in anger, staying silent allows you to process the criticism and respond later with calmness and clarity. That silence ensures that respect remains intact and the relationship remains professional rather than turning personal. Silence, therefore, acts like a soft cushion in our interactions. It absorbs the shock of anger, frustration, or misunderstanding before it can cause lasting harm. It gives both sides the time to cool down. It gives emotions the chance to soften. And most importantly, it prevents temporary anger from creating permanent damage. One of the most powerful examples of silence protecting relationships comes from spiritual teachings. Great saints and monks often teach that when insulted, remain silent. Why? Because responding in anger only fuels the fire. But silence disarms the other person. It takes away their reason to continue fighting. Over time, that silence even transforms the heart of the other person. Many great relationships have been saved not by clever words, but by gentle silence. So, whenever you feel the urge to argue, to shout, to say something hurtful in the heat of the moment, remember this: your words can either build or break. Once spoken, they cannot be reversed. But silence has never destroyed a relationship, it has only protected it. The pause you take today in silence may save you years of regret tomorrow. It may strengthen your bond, deepen your love, and bring peace into your life. In the end, silence is not about ignoring someone or avoiding communication. It is about choosing the right moment to speak and the right words to use. It is about valuing the relationship more than the argument. It is about protecting love, trust, and connection from the storms of anger and pride. Silence, my friends, is not emptiness. It is the invisible thread that holds relationships together when everything else seems to be falling apart. Silence increases your wisdom, and wisdom is not measured by how much we speak, but by how much we understand. In our daily lives, we often assume that the smartest person in the room is the one who talks the most, who shares countless facts, who dominates the conversation. But if you look deeper, you will realize that the truly wise person is usually the one who speaks the least and listens the most. Silence is the soil where wisdom grows. When you are silent, you give yourself time to think, to observe, and to reflect before you speak. Words spoken without thought may sound clever for a moment, but they often lose their value quickly. Words spoken after silence carry weight, depth, and meaning that others remember. Think about an everyday situation in a classroom. There are always some students who answer every question, who raise their hands constantly, eager to speak. But then there are students who may sit quietly, listening to the teacher, absorbing the lesson, and thinking deeply. When they do speak, their answers often surprise everyone because they have taken the time to think, to process, and to understand. Their silence has given birth to wisdom. In conversations too, people who speak less often make the greatest impact. Imagine being in a group discussion where everyone is talking at once, trying to prove their point. In the middle of the noise, there is one person who remains calm and silent, just observing. After everyone has finished, that person finally speaks. And in just a few words, they summarize the essence of the entire conversation. Those few words carry more power than all the loud arguments before. Why? Because silence has allowed them to gather clarity and perspective. Silence also increases wisdom by teaching patience. Many times, we are tempted to respond immediately, to correct someone, to defend ourselves, to prove we are right. But when we pause and stay silent for a moment, we realize that not every situation needs a reaction. Wisdom lies in choosing which battles are worth fighting and which ones are not. For example, if a colleague makes a sarcastic comment at work, your first instinct may be to fire back with your own sarcasm. But if you remain silent, you not only avoid unnecessary conflict, you also show strength and maturity. With time, you learn that silence is not about losing. It is about winning in a higher way by preserving your peace and dignity. In families, silence brings wisdom too. Picture a young child asking endless questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly? Why do I have to study? A tired parent may be tempted to brush the child off with a quick answer or even scold them for asking too much. But if the parent pauses in silence before answering, they realize these questions are not interruptions. They are opportunities to teach, to bond, and to nurture curiosity. Silence creates space for thoughtful answers, and thoughtful answers are a sign of wisdom. Silence also makes you a keen observer of life. When you are quiet, you start noticing small details that others overlook. The expressions on people's faces, the tone of their voice, the emotions behind their words. These details carry wisdom because they help you understand human nature more deeply. For instance, if a friend says, "I'm okay," but you notice their eyes are downcast and their voice is trembling, your silence allows you to read what is unspoken. That understanding is wisdom, and it can help you support others in ways words cannot. Great leaders throughout history have valued silence as a tool of wisdom. They did not rush to speak, they listened, reflected, and then spoke in ways that inspired millions. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, practiced regular days of silence to strengthen his mind and clarity. He believed that silence was not empty but filled with answers. By remaining silent, he was able to access deeper wisdom that guided his actions and decisions. Similarly, in our lives, when we take time to be silent, we discover insights that help us make better choices, resolve conflicts, and guide others. Silence is also a teacher in failure and pain. When life does not go our way, our minds are full of noise. Why did this happen? Who is to blame? What should I do now? But if we sit in silence with our struggles, we begin to learn the lessons hidden in them. Failure speaks loudly, but wisdom whispers softly. You can only hear it when you are silent. For example, when someone loses a job, the noise in their head is panic and fear. But silence allows them to reflect. Perhaps this loss is an opportunity to pursue a career that aligns with their passion. Wisdom comes not from the noise of panic, but from the silence of reflection. Even in spirituality, silence is the path to wisdom. Meditation, prayer, or simply sitting quietly in nature, all these practices are rooted in silence. In silence, you realize truths that no book can teach. You discover the impermanence of problems, the strength within you, and the connection between you and the universe. Wisdom gained in silence is not just knowledge of the head, it is wisdom of the heart. So silence increases your wisdom not by taking words away, but by giving meaning to them. When you are silent, your words become rarer, but also richer. People start listening more when you speak less, because they know your words are thoughtful. Silence teaches you that wisdom is not about speaking quickly, it is about speaking rightly. It teaches you that the loudest voice is not always the wisest one. And it reminds you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Silence gives clarity, and clarity is something we all desperately search for in today's fast, moving world. Our lives are filled with choices, decisions, responsibilities, and distractions, and very often we feel lost, confused, or overwhelmed. In such moments, the mind becomes noisy, full of conflicting thoughts, pulling us in different directions. It is like standing in the middle of a crowded marketplace where everyone is shouting at the same time, trying to sell you something. In that chaos, you cannot hear your own voice. You cannot make a clear decision. But when you step into silence, it is as if the noise fades away and the path ahead begins to appear. Silence has the magical ability to cut through the confusion and give you clarity. Think of a simple example. You are planning your future career. On one side, Your parents have expectations on another side. Society has its judgments. Your friends are taking different paths, and your own heart is whispering something else. When you try to think about it, in the middle of all the opinions and advice, your head becomes heavy, your heart restless. But if you disconnect for a while, no phone, no conversations, no distractions, and sit in silence, you start to hear the faint but powerful voice inside you. That inner voice is clarity. It does not come from the outside world, it comes from the stillness of your own heart. Silence also helps us in daily decision making. Imagine you are angry at a friend who has hurt you. The mind screams, "Say something now! Reply immediately! Show them you are right." But if you stay silent for some time, clarity arises. You begin to ask yourself, do I really need to respond right now? Will my words heal or will they harm? Is it worth losing a relationship over this? That moment of silence helps you see the situation clearly, and often you realize that patience and understanding are more valuable than proving a point. In workplaces, silence becomes a tool for leaders. A manager who reacts instantly to every problem often creates more confusion. But a leader who pauses, stays silent, and reflects before making decisions is seen as wise and dependable. That silence gives them the clarity to choose not what is quick, but what is right. For example, when a company faces a crisis, the leader who immediately blames others or rushes into action often worsens the problem. But the leader who takes a day in silence, studies the situation carefully, and then speaks with a clear plan earns respect and trust. Silence gives them clarity, and clarity gives others confidence. Silence also clears the fog of emotions. Emotions are powerful. They can blind us, they can control us. When we are too happy, we may promise more than we can deliver. When we are too sad, we may give up hope too quickly. When we are too angry, we may destroy relationships we actually value. But silence cools the fire of emotions and allows us to see things as they really are. Take the example of a student who fails an important exam. Immediately, their mind fills with noise. I am a failure. I can never succeed. My life is ruined. But if that student stays silent, sits alone for a while, and reflects, they realize that failure is not the end. It is feedback. It is a chance to try again with more preparation. That clarity comes only when silence washes away the noise of panic. Even in our personal growth, silence is a mirror. When you are constantly surrounded by people, by media, by opinions, you cannot see yourself clearly. But when you are silent, you begin to notice your strengths, your weaknesses, your desires, and your values. For instance, someone may be busy chasing money all their life, thinking it will bring happiness. But in a moment of silence, they realize what they truly crave is peace, time with family, meaningful relationships. That realization is clarity, and clarity changes the direction of life. Nature is the greatest teacher of silence and clarity. Have you ever walked into a forest or sat by a calm river? At first, your mind may still be running with thoughts, but slowly, the silence of nature begins to touch you. The rustling of leaves, the flow of water, the quietness of the air, they all bring your mind into stillness. And in that stillness, suddenly, you see your life more clearly. Many great thinkers, poets, and leaders found their clarity not in noise, but in silent communion with nature. Clarity from silence is not about having all the answers instantly. It is about removing the unnecessary noise so the real answers can emerge. It is like muddy water. If you keep stirring it, it remains cloudy. But if you leave it alone in silence, slowly the dirt settles and the water becomes clear. Our mind is the same. When we are restless, confused, or anxious, our thoughts are muddy. But when we sit in silence, the unnecessary thoughts settle and the truth becomes visible. So, silence gives clarity in ways that nothing else can. It gives clarity in relationships by showing us what truly matters. It gives clarity in decisions by helping us separate emotions from wisdom. It gives clarity in failures by teaching us lessons we could not see in the noise of disappointment. It gives clarity in life by reminding us of our true values and desires. And above all, it gives clarity by connecting us with our inner self, the part of us that always knows the right direction. Therefore, whenever you feel confused, restless, or lost, do not run to noise for answers. Instead, choose silence, sit quietly, let the thoughts settle, let the heart speak. For in silence, clarity blooms. And when clarity comes, decisions become easier, relationships become stronger, and life becomes more meaningful. Silence builds inner strength, and inner strength is one of the greatest powers a human being can possess. It is not the strength of muscles or the loudness of voice, but the quiet courage to stay calm in chaos, to stay grounded when the world shakes you, and to remain steady when life tests you. Most people think that power lies in dominating others with words, shouting the loudest, or proving oneself in every argument. But true strength lies in the opposite, in the ability to stay silent when provoked, to choose peace over anger, and to walk away with dignity rather than fight with ego. Think of a situation when someone insults you in public. The natural reaction of the mind is to shout back, to defend your pride, to make sure everyone knows you are not weak. But silence in that moment is not weakness, it is supreme strength. It shows that you are in control of yourself, not at the mercy of another's words. It shows that your self-respect does not depend on what someone else says or thinks. The person who insults expects a reaction, expects a fight. When you remain silent, you surprise them, you disarm them, and more importantly, you protect your own peace. That silence is a demonstration of inner strength, because it is always harder to hold back than to explode. Inner strength through silence is also visible in times of loss or failure. When life takes away something precious, maybe a loved one, maybe a dream, maybe an opportunity, the heart feels broken and the mind fills with noise. Why me? Why now? How will I survive? In those moments, silence becomes a sanctuary. By sitting quietly with your pain, by not rushing to cover it with distractions, you discover a strength within yourself that you never knew existed. You begin to realize that you can endure, that you can heal, that you can rise again. This strength does not come from fighting the pain with noise, but from embracing it with silence. Consider the example of athletes. When they train, their greatest victories are not won in the stadium filled with cheering crowds, but in the silent hours of discipline, practice, and sacrifice. In those moments of silence, when no one is watching, when the body is tired, when the mind says give up, they build inner strength. That strength is invisible to the world until the day it shines on the field. Similarly, in our lives, the inner strength we build in silence is not always visible. but it becomes our shield when we face the storms of life. Even in daily life, silence gives us strength against the small irritations that otherwise control us. For example, being stuck in traffic can make many people restless, honking, shouting, complaining. But the person who sits in silence, who breathes, who accepts the situation calmly, is the stronger one. Why? Because they are not controlled by the external world. They are in control of themselves. This small practice of silence in daily frustrations becomes the foundation of great inner strength in bigger challenges. Silence also strengthens us against criticism. In today's world of social media, everyone has an opinion. No matter what you do, someone will criticize, someone will mock, someone will judge. If we react to every negative comment, we will exhaust ourselves. But if we practice silence, if we learn to let go of unnecessary battles, we grow stronger. We realize that our value is not determined by the noise of the crowd, but by the peace of our own heart. That inner strength, born from silence, allows us to walk with confidence, even when the world is against us. Think of the lives of great leaders and saints. Their strength was not in raising their voices, but in their ability to remain silent, calm, and steady even in the face of great opposition. When Mahatma Gandhi faced insults and oppression, his silence was more powerful than the loud voices of his enemies. His strength came from self-control, from silence that refused to bow down to anger or hatred. True strength is not in how loudly you speak, but in how deeply you can endure without losing your peace. Silence also builds inner strength by teaching us detachment. We often become prisoners of our emotions, anger, jealousy, fear, or pride. But when we practice silence, we learn to observe these emotions instead of being ruled by them. For example, when someone cuts you off in traffic, anger immediately rises. But if you stay silent, if you just observe your anger without reacting, you slowly realize you are not your anger. You are bigger than it. That realization builds immense inner strength because you are no longer a slave to emotions. You are their master. And then there are times when silence builds strength through patience. In life, not everything comes quickly. Dreams take time, relationships need nurturing, goals demand effort. Silence teaches us to wait with strength without becoming restless. The farmer plants seeds and waits in silence, trusting the process. Similarly, when we work towards our dreams, silence teaches us that strength is not about forcing results, but about holding faith until the results bloom. In the end, silence builds inner strength because it connects us to ourselves. In silence, we meet the part of us that is unshaken by success or failure, praise or criticism, love or rejection. We meet the unbroken core of our being, the strength that has always been there, waiting for us to discover it. When you find that strength, you no longer need to prove yourself to the world. You no longer need to fight every battle. You no longer fear the storms of life. You simply walk with quiet confidence, knowing that silence has made you strong. So, remember, silence is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It is the strength to hold back when your ego wants to fight, the strength to endure when life tests you, the strength to stay calm when the world is restless, and the strength to trust when everything seems uncertain. Silence builds inner strength, and that strength will carry you through every challenge life places before you. Silence improves focus. And focus is the golden key to achieving anything meaningful in life. In today's world, our attention is constantly pulled in 1,000 directions. Phones buzzing, notifications popping, conversations happening around us, responsibilities weighing on us, and endless distractions calling for our time. In such a noisy environment, it becomes almost impossible to give our full energy to one thing. And yet, when we look at the people who achieve greatness in any field, whether it is science, art, sports, or spirituality, we see one common thread: they knew how to focus. And that focus was born out of silence. When you are silent, the world's noise starts to fade and your mind begins to settle. Imagine trying to read a book in the middle of a crowded marketplace with vendors shouting, music playing, and people pushing around. Even if the book is filled with wisdom, you won't be able to absorb a single line properly. Now imagine reading the same book in a quiet library or a peaceful room. Suddenly, every word makes sense. Your mind connects with the message and you gain clarity. The difference is not in the book, but in the silence around you. That is how silence sharpens focus. It removes distractions so your mind can give its full attention to the task at hand. Focus gained through silence can transform even small daily activities. Consider a student preparing for exams. If they study while listening to music, checking their phone every few minutes, or chatting with friends, their mind is divided into pieces. But if the student creates silence, turns off the phone, sits in a calm environment, and studies with full concentration, they will accomplish in 1 hour what others may take 3 hours to achieve. Silence multiplies productivity because it concentrates all the scattered energy of the mind into one single beam of focus. Just like sunlight magnified through a lens can create fire, think also of athletes. When they step onto the field, the crowd may be roaring, but inside their mind, there is silence. They are not thinking of the noise. They are not thinking of yesterday or tomorrow. They are fully focused on the present moment. A tennis player, for example, must silence all thoughts and give complete attention to the ball. A runner must silence every distraction and focus only on the finish line. Their success is not only because of physical training, but because of mental silence that allows focus to become unbreakable. In our daily work lives, silence has the same power. Meetings, emails, calls, and endless multitasking scatter our focus, leaving us exhausted but unproductive. But when we take time for silence, perhaps starting the day with a few minutes of quiet meditation, or stepping away from the noise to plan in peace, we discover that tasks become clearer, priorities become obvious, and focus becomes natural. Silence gives us the ability to cut through the unimportant and devote ourselves fully to what truly matters. Silence also improves focus in relationships. How often do we talk to someone while our mind is elsewhere, thinking of work, scrolling through the phone, or planning our response before they even finish speaking? This scattered attention weakens our connections. But when we bring silence into our listening, when we stop the inner chatter and give our full presence to the other person, we focus not just on their words, but on their emotions, their tone, their unspoken feelings. That focused attention strengthens bonds more than any fancy words ever could. Another powerful example is creativity. Writers, painters, musicians, and inventors have always valued silence. Why? Because silence is the birthplace of focus and imagination. A poet cannot write surrounded by endless noise. A painter cannot focus on if their mind is scattered. In silence, creative energy flows like a river, uninterrupted. Focus in such moments creates masterpieces that inspire the world. Many great discoveries in history did not come in noisy labs, but in silent reflections. Newton under a tree, Einstein in his quiet thought experiments. Their silence gave them focus, and their focus gave them brilliance. Even in spirituality, silence is the path to focus. Meditation is nothing but the art of silencing the mind so that focus can turn inward. In silence, we stop focusing on the outer world and begin focusing on the inner world. That focus reveals truths about ourselves that we cannot find in books or conversations. A distracted mind runs everywhere but finds nothing. A focused mind, born from silence, discovers peace, joy, and wisdom within. Silence also teaches us the power of being fully present. Most of us live in fragments. Our body is in one place, but our mind is somewhere else. We are at dinner with family but thinking of work. We are at work but thinking of vacations. We are constantly divided, and that lack of focus robs us of life's richness. Silence pulls us back into the present moment. When you sit silently with a cup of tea, without phone or distraction, you notice the aroma, the warmth, the taste. You experience it fully. That same focus, when applied to relationships, work, or dreams, makes life deeper and more fulfilling. Silence improves focus because it disciplines the restless mind. Just as a wild horse needs training to run in one direction, the human mind needs silence to focus its energy. Without silence, the mind runs in 100 directions, achieving little. With silence, the mind becomes sharp, steady, and powerful. So remember, silence is not just the absence of noise. It is the presence of focus. It is the secret tool that turns confusion into clarity, distraction into concentration, and ordinary efforts into extraordinary results. Whether you are a student, a professional, a leader, or simply someone seeking peace, silence will sharpen your focus and multiply your strength. In silence, you do not lose time, you save it. In silence, you do not avoid life, you experience it more fully. And in silence, you do not become weaker, you become laser, focused, capable of achieving anything you set your heart on.